Greetings sailors and welcome to a Patreon replay, and this is actually from a brand new patron, and I'm not going to attempt the whole name because it's Latin, so I'm just going to call him Legio. And I know Felix is cat, it's something, I don't know, Flavia Felix, is that something cat? I presume this is the name of an actual Roman legion, I don't know. Anyway, so he's in the Helena, and it's a top tier game, which is always rather nice, especially if you're in a cruiser. And as with basically all the rest of the light cruisers for the US, this thing doesn't have a great range. Now, I say that, it's not strictly true. The Omaha at tier 5 actually has a pretty good range for a tier 5 light cruiser, but the thing is, from tier 5 up to tier 8, it doesn't actually grow by all that much. It's only once you get to tier 9 and tier 10 where you have at least the option of stacking on the range module. But the thing is, with the light US cruiser shells, with the ballistics that they have, that's not necessarily a thing you might want to do, because, okay, with the Worcester, yes, you can get it up to, I don't even know how many kilometers, what, almost 20, something like that? Is it even over? Potentially? Not actually sure, haven't checked that, but you can get it to quite a long range. It's just at the point where you're trying to hit somebody at max range, unless they're a stationary or very slow moving battleship, good luck actually managing to hit anything. So in this instance, it looks like this is the flank where there's less happening overall, and there's a couple of battleships maybe trying to push through the middle. There's also a destroyer here, but apart from that, it seems like a lot of the enemy team is heading towards the other side. Now, potentially that kind of sucks, wherein you're in a cruiser with a short main battery firing range, but he's actually going to still get, as you'll see, a pretty decent amount of damage out of this game. And these two battleships, these two, well, in this case a tier 4 and a tier 5 battleship, pushing through the middle, are certainly not hurting his damage count. I mean, it's not up to that much so far, but yeah, these are slow moving ships that are not going to be particularly resistant to his shells. You might be wondering, by the way, why are there tier 4s in this game? You might also have noticed tier 4 carriers. This is basically failed divisioning, people trying to use tier 4 carriers to anchor their tier 5 divisions so they don't get into tier 5 games, but it doesn't always work. Yes, hello Sam. Sam agrees that it also doesn't always work, and in which case you end up with, as here, because people were trying it at the same time, you know, multiple people were trying it at the same time, multiple divisions were trying it at the same time, it's ended up being a situation where the matchmaking's just put them on opposite sides in a tier 7 game. So this is why you have tier 4 carriers, tier 4 battleships in a tier 7 game. So well done those people. So that's the New York and the Wyoming down and out. There is also an Akatsuki that's having a go at pressing into the cap, but maybe that's not Legio's main concern right now, because there's also that Nagato right there. Although I don't think they're in a position to really fire it in. They're not looking like they're going to press the middle at all, so it might actually be a good opportunity for him to get some damage, because this is one of the better maps for this style of cruiser. It's not exclusive to the US light cruisers, but one thinks of the US light cruisers when one thinks of using island cover to sit and hit things over and over again. And so the fact that there's not that much on this flank, I mean, it doesn't matter that much maybe in terms of doing damage if you can at least hit, as here, a single top tier battleship, because that's still potentially quite a big hit point pool for you to feast on. So it's up to almost 50k. They haven't actually taken the A cap yet, but the enemy team hasn't either. We do have a fair few ships on the back line there from his own team. Was that a Koenig and obviously the carriers there, but oh, there's two carriers because it's a 2-carrier game. I had even forgotten to mention that point. One of the carriers per team is tier 4, but the other's tier 6. It's not double tier 4 carriers. in a tier 7 game. That would actually be a bit hilarious. How wacky would the matchmaking have to be for that to occur? Anyway, so apparently it's just a Koenig that's at the back there, which is still a bit far away from the action, but anyway. So, time to be a bit more aggressive, and this is definitely a slightly risky choice because there's a Gneisenau out there as well, going out against the 16 and 15-inch guns of these two ships is, yeah, it's certainly an aggressive manoeuvre, and it could go badly wrong. But for now, at least one of them's ignoring him. I think it's the Nagato. So he's just farming them, and the Gneisenau doesn't have that many guns, but they're still 15-inch guns that can still hurt. So he has to be certainly quite cagey here. But he's decided on this course of action, and so far it's paying off. He's actually farming this Gneisenau quite nicely, although they're clearly less than happy about this and all the fires that he's set on them, because now they're paying some attention to him as well. So the Gneisenau is now the closer target. He's going to, I think, trust to the fires and switch to the potentially higher threat target right now, although maybe ensuring that the Nagato goes down would be the higher priority, but it does seem like they are rapidly burning out. And there we go, not too much longer to go, and that will also just put him at 100,000 damage. That's exactly what I was saying about, you know, if you've got a top tier battleship to pick on, then you don't necessarily need to worry about having lots of targets. You still get a decent amount of hit points. But of course, as I point out from time to time, it's not necessarily about the raw hit point value in terms of what your end result will be on the score screen. It's all down to the proportion of an enemy's hit points that you take off. So that's why you might have a game where you fire a lot of destroyers and have a comparatively small damage total, but end up with a decent score because it's needed that much less damage done to take off a high proportion of somebody's health, as opposed to a battleship where it requires a lot more work and it takes a lot longer. So now he's just continuing to hammer away at the Gneisenau, but his luck slightly ran out there. He's been doing all right up till that point, and then I think that was that maybe even a Citadel? I don't know. It was a fairly decent chunk of damage, and it knocked out one of his guns as well, temporarily. So rather than take the very risky broadside manoeuvre, he's actually turning back north again and minimizing his profile in the process, but also slightly minimizing the amount of firepower he can get out. But he's still, I mean, this thing's covered with turrets. He's still got a pretty good amount of firepower he can put out. It's one of the reasons why these ships, I mean, they're maybe slightly niche in that they are somewhat dependent on getting a decent map, and can sometimes be a bit boring to play, but just the US cruisers generally do not, the light cruisers do not lack for guns, they do not lack for firepower output. So if you get the chance to put them to their kind of best effort in terms of DPM and just picking on targets over and over again, yeah, they can rack up a fair bit of damage, and we're actually now closing in on 150k. So we'll see if we can make that before the end, because it does really now look like it's starting to go in this team's favour. They've basically, like, the enemy team capped A, and their team's contained it essentially. The Mutsuki has actually then flipped the no, was that the A cap or the C cap? I can't see. That's the C cap they just flipped. And Legio, meanwhile, took 2 enemy top tier battleships out of the action. The Nagato was maybe the more dangerous of them in terms of how they were being played. I mean, a well played Gneisenau is certainly a threat, but this particular Gneisenau may be less of a threat. But still, having pulled away 2 battleships in a single cruiser, that's no mean feat. And it looks like you might actually get a good chance to get another kill out of this as well. But he'll have to hurry it up. He doesn't have necessarily all of that much time left. I mean, there's still 7.5 minutes on the clock, but they've got 3 caps and they are steadily accumulating points. And of course, every extra kill, like for instance Amy Nelson going down, bumps that up even further. So it's now over 800 points, but that's still enough time, you know, unless the Gneiser now is able to suddenly pop a heal at an inopportune moment. This looks like he should be able to get this this final kill, and indeed he's now just playing rather more aggressively, closing the distance and taking the risk obviously of heavier damage, but just absolutely abusing his superior rate of fire. And there we go, gets the kill. That pushes them to over 900 points, and at this point we're going to skip ahead almost to the score screens just because that's it for Legio. The game then ticks up to 1,000 points and they win. The last 30-40 seconds was really not a lot happening. So that was Witherer and High Caliber and the other one, Arsonist. Was it 2 Arsonists he got there? Basically all of the fire. And down at the very bottom of the team list we can see that Koenig that was parked on the back line, unsurprisingly. Yeah, so it was about half and half actually. Nearly 80k from his main battery hits, just under 75k from fires, and that's about as balanced as you're going to get, I suppose. But yeah, he certainly did a fair bit, considering that was not the active flank. Potentially he also rather sped up the outcome of that game by first taking out the Nagato and then pulling that Gneiser now so far from anywhere that actually mattered, and eventually killing him and then, you know, getting those points as well. So yeah, overall that was a pretty good US light cruiser game, I would say, and quite a nice one to show off for a new Patreon supporter. I do want to drop a little note here saying I am feeling a little under the weather at the moment. I've got no idea what it is. I don't think it's the current malady that's, you know, going around, the topical malady, shall we say. But yeah, I've just been feeling a bit grotty generally, so there might be quite a lot of just stream highlights this week. But I do have some other replays as well. It's just, in terms of how I'm feeling and sleep and everything, yeah. It's finding the energy and everything to actually sit down and do them that's the hard part. Anyway, so hopefully you enjoyed this replay, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.